On your Wednesday episode of Locked On Raptors, RJ Barrett has an AC sprain in his right shoulder. What does it mean? Well, I'll tell you what it means coming up. Thanks for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Wednesday, October the 9th. And I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now, going on 11 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the Hell website that sucks at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors. And of course, you can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. Lots of new faces joining us in there as the season draws near. We'd love to see some more new faces join us in there. It's a great time. Come hang out. It's a wonderful little community we got building around the show. And it's free to join. Link in the description of the podcast. As always, of course, you can find the show for free on your favorite audio podcast apps, and we're on video on YouTube as well. Go subscribe, follow, rate, review, etc., etc. Much appreciated when you go ahead and do that. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And we will get started here on a solo show talking all about RJ Barrett's injury. Yeah, some not great news yesterday from the Raptors, although I think it could have been a whole lot worse. We'll get into why. I'm going to talk about who starts with RJ Barrett, probably sidelined for the start of the season at least. Maybe there's some hope he'll play, but we got to examine who's going to start if he cannot go as of October the 23rd. And then I want to run through with all the injuries this team is facing: Bruce Brown, Jacoby Walter, RJ Barrett. I want to just kind of go through who has the most to gain or lose on this roster from all of the opportunity that is ripe and fresh in the air with all the injuries going on with this team. So we'll get to that to close things out. But let's start off just with the reporting, the news. Yesterday, the Raptors announced that RJ Barrett suffered a sprained AC joint. I'm not going to say the whole name of the joint because I'm no doctor. In his right shoulder. It's the exact same injury suffered by Jacoby Walter, of course, that he's been dealing with for the last couple of weeks. He's out for the rest of the preseason. Is RJ Barrett will be reevaluated then around October the 18th. Seems his availability for opening night on the 23rd is very much in doubt. Now, it seems like he kind of avoided the worst. There have been shoulder injuries in the past that have very much derailed guys' entire seasons. I think of Pascal Siakam's shoulder surgery way back, going into 21-22, where he came in after like months off in the summer. I think it was like a 4 to 6 month recovery time for him, if I'm remembering correctly. There are shoulder injuries that can be real bad. It seems like RJ Barrett has avoided what the worst case scenario could have been here after he ran into that screen from Jonas Valanciunas in the preseason game in Montreal on Sunday. A couple of internet doctors, and when I say that, I'm actually, these are serious people who talk about sports injuries, know what they're talking about. Dr. Ali Rindelli on the Hell website said the AC joint, aka a separated shoulder injury, is classified on the amount of damage or tearing to the ligaments that attach the acromion, whatever the hell it's called, whatever muscle it is, to the clavicle, your collarbone. Treatment depends on the degree of tearing, majority or non-surgical. Timeline average 2 to 6 weeks. Jeff Stotts in street clothes on the Hell website as well. Really great injury guy. Said RJ Barrett's AC sprain is better known as a separated shoulder and occurs when the collarbone meets the shoulder blade. The average time lost for low-grade, nondescript AC sprains in the NBA is about 4.8 games or 12 and a half days. That's encouraging. The Raptors don't play an NBA regular season game for 14 days. He got hurt 3 days ago. So maybe there's a window here if it's on the mild side that RJ Barrett can come back and play as of the start of the season. You hold out hope for that, and I think you expect that it's probably going to be a little bit longer than that because, look, you can't always hope for the best case scenario with injuries, and I don't think it serves anybody for the Raptors to force him back. It's not his non-shooting shoulder, so maybe that is helpful in the recovery here. We'll see, but I would expect, based on the sort of rough 12 and a half days to 6 weeks outlook in that range of outcomes, usually pretty safe to say 3-4 weeks. He'll miss a couple of games. Maybe he gets back early November. If he gets back before that, I think that's great. That's gravy. And so what does it all mean for the team? What does it mean for RJ? First off, it sucks for RJ, right? He has been on an absolute tear ever since the trade with the Knicks last year, going all the way back to his time with the Raptors, with Team Canada, and then, of course, the first preseason game where he absolutely lit the Nets on fire. He's been awesome, and you hope that this doesn't derail anything for him. I don't think it necessarily will. He's played a lot of basketball lately. He's very comfortable, it seems, within his role on this team. Hopefully he can just kind of pick up where he left off, and he's, none the worse for it once he's back on the floor. I think it's still a bummer. He's a guy who I think a lot of Raptors fans are very excited about, and rightfully so. He's playing his ass off, and it's been super fun to watch him come into his own as a Toronto Raptor. And again, we're talking about him in maybe sort of more dire terms than it actually is. He'll probably be back before the calendar turns to mid-November at the very, very latest. So it's probably not also bad here. But either way, I do think, and this is nothing against RJ Barrett, who I think is great and is very good and very important to this team actually winning minutes and winning basketball games this year. I do think if you're going to go without one of the core four guys in Barrett, Quickly, Barnes, or Pirtle, Barrett is probably the one whose absence you can stand to weather the easiest of those four guys. We saw last year, right? Scotty Barnes and Jakob Pirtle are out. You're screwed. You have no chance of running out a team that has like the capacity to be a place where good player development happens. That's what this season is all about. It's player development. It's getting guys run. It's figuring out what you have. It's putting in systems. It's getting continuity built. It's all of that. And without Pirtle as the backline of the defense, without Scotty Barnes as a major hub of shot creation and defense, this team's got no shot to play developmentally friendly basketball. They play the basketball we saw for the last 21 games last year where they went 2-19. RJ Barrett does not have that level of impact on the team's ability to play regular functional basketball. I also think Emmanuel Quickly is a tougher guy to go without. He is a huge hub of shot creation on this team as well. Big scoring punch, obviously. I'm sure his scoring load is going to be increased quite a bit with RJ out. And I just think the way he spaces the floor, the way his vertical spacing, kind of stretching out to well past the three-point line. I guess that's not vertical spacing. Horizontal spacing? Vertical spacing is lob dunks. Either way, the spacing that Quickly brings as an excellent pull-up and off the move three-point shooter, you can't replace that. And I think they'd be in a lot more dire straits. As much as Jamal Shead is the second coming of Chris Paul plus Kyle Lowry plus Steph Curry plus all of the greatest point guards of all time, he's a rookie. He's not going to be able to step in and do what Quickly does for you right away because the shooting is just so bloody important with what Quickly's package is as a player. So again, without Barrett, I think they can hang. Without those three guys or one of those three guys, things get a lot more difficult. And so if you're going to have one of the four guys out, Barrett's probably the one you can weather the most, as much as it still sucks. And they're going to have a lot to fill in, particularly in the scoring department. There's going to be a lot of buckets out there that need to be filled in, as RJ is just maybe the most reliable play finisher on this team right now. Not necessarily the best creator, but certainly a guy who you get in the ball, get him going downhill, he's going to score at the rim and make life hell for the other team. So I think the other thing that kind of I think about with this injury is just it really sheds a light on how bad the wing depth on this team is. And we're going to get into some of the options to fill in for RJ. Spoiler alert, none of them are all that inspiring. And so, maybe the Raptors are fine with that. Maybe the Raptors, it's by design that after their first layer of good guys, there's not a whole lot to fill in. I don't agree with it. I wish they had better assembled this roster to make sense and have layers of depth in various places, but that's just not the way things are. It's kind of shocking that RJ Barrett at 6'6" is one of just like the bigger guys on this team and the upper half of guys on this team who are going to play, who bring size to the table. And so they're going to be dealing with a size deficit on the wing without him, unless they can kind of get creative. We'll get into some ways they can do that. But yeah, it really shows just how rough things can get once the first layer of guys on this team goes down in terms of the guys backfilling. This is like a great white shark having really sharp teeth, and then a tooth falls out, and then it gets replaced with like a molar that is like decayed. It's kind of the situation with the Raptors depth chart right now. Maybe that's too visceral. I don't know. Either way, maybe there's some blessing to come out of this too, right? Like this happens sometimes where an injury happens early in the season and then some guys get some run, and maybe you reveal that you had some viable depth that you didn't think you had because guys get some run. I'm not sure Barrett's going to be out long enough for that to really transpire in this case, but with Brown, with Walter, with Barrett all out right now, like there's a lot of opportunity. We're going to get into that at the end of the show. Who stands to gain the most or lose the most if they can grasp or not grasp the opportunity handed to them with these injuries. But if someone does pop, if a guy or two kind of shows more than we thought they were capable of showing, all of a sudden, hey, like maybe there's something there. And you look at once those guys come back and Barrett, Brown, and Walter, you look at the depth chart and say, hey, like there's actually like 12 guys here who we feel pretty good about playing NBA minutes. That's not so bad. So we'll see. I'm not terribly optimistic about that happening. We'll get into some of the options to start and close in place of RJ in a second here. None of them are super pretty, but that's the rundown on RJ's injury. It stinks. I don't think it's like a catastrophic thing that's going to send them into the tank right away or anything like that. They maybe lose an extra game in the early part of the schedule that they would have otherwise won. It remains a very tough schedule out of the gate. They've got some tough opponents. They play the Nuggets twice early on. They play the Wolves early on, the Cavs. Like, it's not going to be a picnic for the Raptors with or without RJ Barrett. Hopefully, it's a short absence and it isn't something that kind of derails the season and is the sort of foretelling of really bad things to come for the team. I don't think it's going to be that dire. We'll come back on the other side and get into who starts or closes for RJ Barrett and the various options there. Not exactly a lot of wonderful an embarrassment of riches to choose from here, but we'll get to that coming up in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp. And look, sometimes you got to have someone to talk to get yourself over some things. Maybe there's some things in your life that you've got a fear of. Maybe there's some things that are holding you back from doing the things that you want to do to make yourself happy. Therapy can be a great way to have those conversations, have a sounding board for you to throw stuff off of, and they are just there to listen and offer insights on how you can then progress in your life to make yourself more fulfilled, make yourself feel like you're being the best version of yourself. And BetterHelp is a great way to go try it out. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. That's a big deal. If you're able to switch your therapist because it's not the right fit the first time, that's a very nice thing, especially if you're not getting charged extra money. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Back at it here on your Wednesday edition of Locked On Raptors, talking RJ Barrett injury fallout. And hopefully this is all sort of unnecessary panic and fallout discussion. And RJ Barrett's ready to go for day one on the 23rd, 2 weeks from today. Very exciting, by the way. NBA regular season basketball. Very, very soon. Either way, if he's not available, obviously there is a pretty big chasm in the Raptors starting five that's going to need filling until RJ Barrett can return to the floor. I would suspect RJ is going to play something close to 34, 35 minutes a game this season. He's going to be a workhorse for this team. Someone's got to eat up that time and fill in the gaps that RJ is leaving behind. And I think there are a handful of different ways you could go with this one. I have my preferences. I don't think any of them are like super sexy. I think they all kind of have their upsides and downsides. I think I'd probably, and this is like not something I'm thrilled about saying because I've not been super impressed with his time with the Toronto Raptors, but I do think Ochai Agbaji is probably just the guy you throw in there just to see. We'll get into the opportunity rankings in a second. Ochai will feature heavily there as well. But, you know, I think just because he offers some semblance of size, he's only 6'5", yes, but the other guys on this team who fill in on the wing, also not exactly robust. And so if Ochai can offer maybe a slight upgrade on the defense you get from RJ Barrett, hopefully knock down a couple threes, hopefully do the thing where he can drive and finish at the rim as he's done well in spurts and flashes and fits and starts since becoming a Raptor. Maybe that's the way for Ochai to find some footing in the NBA. Maybe this is a way to play him with better players as well, right? You play him with Quickly and Gradey Dick. You have space around him. You got Pirtle to, you know, screen for him and stuff. Maybe you can use Ochai in the similar way you use RJ, kind of flying off curls, get him towards the rim. Maybe there's something there. You can kind of keep the integrity of what your starting five does, just as like a lineup and what they do with their sets and things like that with Ochai more than these other guys. You know, maybe that's something there. I think, you know, the 3-point shooting is the big thing, right? And if he's not going to shoot threes, as much as RJ Barrett is not someone teams super care about when he's shooting threes, he's knocking them down with reckless abandon since becoming a Toronto Raptor, and those threes count as points. If he's hitting 2-3 threes a game and he's shooting 39% from deep, as he has as a Raptor, that's a big deal. It's not 2 or 3 threes, it's more like 1.5 or 2, but still, those are points on the board that right now I'm not convinced Ochai Agbaji is recreating for you. And so that's the downside. there's going to be, we'll talk again about opportunity, but there's going to be room for other guys to uptick their scoring load big time here. And so we'll see. But yeah, I think Ochai is probably just the chalk answer. I also think he's probably less essential to a lot of the bench lineups this team wants to run than some of the other guys that we're going to talk about here in a second as other options. And so that kind of keeps the integrity of your second unit together as well. But yeah, it's not like I'm not thrilled about Ochai Agbaji starting games for this team out of the gate, but this is where we are. This is the Raptors depth chart that we have had assembled for us, and this is the reality we're living. So Ochai probably my pick. Leader in the clubhouse to be the starter on day one. And it's a big time for Ochai. We'll get to more on that in a little bit. The number 2 guy I think you could go with is Davion Mitchell. I think similar to what I talked about with Ochai being able to kind of recreate some of the stuff RJ Barrett does on offense. I think Davion Mitchell's good at that stuff too, right? Davion Mitchell has always been a better player, kind of getting downhill off the ball and getting into the paint and getting into the sort of tight areas where he's been a very effective scorer throughout his NBA career. He's obviously got, I think, a little bit more three-point juice than Ochai Agbaji, which is kind of a crazy thing to say, but going by recent track record, Davion Mitchell's a better three-point shooter than Ochai Agbaji, and so there's a little extra space there. The problem with starting Davion Mitchell is size, right? You're pushing Gradey Dick down to the 3. You're running a 6'2" guard, Davion Mitchell with Emmanuel Quickley, who, yes, is 6'3", is a little bit long for a spot. Maybe you can get by. And I do think ultimately, like, the best lineups for Davion Mitchell are going to be ones where he plays with Emmanuel Quickley. And so maybe this is a way to optimize Mitchell early on while also giving our guy Jamal Shead some run as the second unit backup point guard. And maybe I'm talking myself on the fly into Mitchell starting here. I'm not sure. But again, the size thing is a real problem, right? And so I think you're probably looking at, if Mitchell were to start, you're kind of just, you're fiddling with matchups. You're forcing Scotty Barnes probably to have to guard the opposing wings on other teams a lot more because, RJ Barrett's not there to do it. And I'm not sure you trust Gradey Dick to go and do that right now. So the shape and the sort of the optimized version of your defense is thrown out of whack by that. Whereas if you have Ochai Agbaji in there, at the very least, he can guard the opposing wings and offer some resistance, hopefully. And you can keep Scotty Barnes in the place where he's at his best, where he's that backline cleanup man. And so I think because of that, that's where I'm talking myself back into Mitchell coming off the bench still with Barrett out. But I wouldn't be like shocked or appalled if Davion Mitchell starts in place of RJ Barrett out of the gate. And, you might be able to find some good stuff with a Mitchell quickly backcourt. We'll see. I just think that puts a lot of onus on Gradey Dick to be a much better defender than we've seen that he's capable of being. So I would still err on the side of Ochai Agbaji filling in that starting spot over Davion Mitchell. The other guy you could consider, probably not, but you could, is Kelly Olynyk, who I think I've kind of kicked around the idea of him starting in place of Gradey Dick, earlier on in the offseason, just in the interest of having size on the floor, pushing RJ Barrett to the 2, Scotty at the 3. You have the Olynyk Pirtle front court, which I think fits pretty nicely together. You have Pirtle to cover for Olynyk's defensive weaknesses. You have the spacing provided by Olynyk as a pretty high volume 3-point shooter when he's out there, a pretty accurate 3-point shooter as well. I think you could that like a lineup featuring with Kelly Olynyk in place of RJ Barrett. So quickly Dick, Barnes, Olynyk, Pirtle. It's not going to really defend anyone, one would think, but it might score a crap ton of points. And so maybe you get by with that. The thing I don't love about that is Kelly feels like he's going to be pretty essential to giving some organization to the second units for this team. And I think Kelly in the second unit is also going to be pretty essential to making some other guys on this team playable, whether it's Jonathan Mobo, whether it's Davion Mitchell, whether it's just the guys who don't have a ton of shooting juice. Having Kelly out there to sort of offset that in the front court spot is pretty important. And so I think I'd still like to see Kelly come off the bench. And again, I think the defense for a quickly Dick, Barnes, Kelly, Pirtle lineup could be pretty disastrously bad. You're having Scotty play out of his best position. You're asking Kelly Olynyk to clean up messes or guard guys at the point of attack. Not so much for me. Gradey Dick obviously is still going to be exposed. I think there's a lot of downsides if you're going to have Kelly start in place of RJ Barrett. So I'd probably go, even if Kelly might be just the single most talented guy you could fill in for RJ Barrett with. I think just the way the team shape would be thrown out of whack, the rotation's thrown out of whack, and the defensive liabilities in that starting five. I'd probably go against that. I'd rather some defense in there over another injection of offense, because I think that lineup's still got a shot to score pretty well with quickly Dick, Barnes, and Pirtle out there anyway. And so, yeah, Kelly Olynyk is kind of a non-starter for me there. There is one guy who's kind of a stealth option in Chris Boucher, who I will get into coming up when we talk about the opportunity power rankings, because I do think Chris Boucher factors into that, and we can get into what he might look like as a starter / closer for the Raptors as well. We'll do that coming up in just 1 second. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, the #1 sportsbook in North America. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you go place your live bets on games that are happening. And you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's pretty sweet. That's FanDuel.com. Go check him out. Of course, it's not just NFL live in-game betting or NFL bets, period. Of course, you got the WNBA finals coming up. You've got the Minnesota Lynx and the New York Liberty. That's going to be a ton of fun. You can go throw some money on who you think might win that. Futures bets on the NBA, the NHL, baseball playoffs. It's all going on. Go check out FanDuel right now, the #1 sportsbook in North America and the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. Back at it here, closing things out, talking RJ Barrett's injury and the opportunity he and Bruce Brown and Ja'Kobe Walter are going to offer other guys by not being in the lineup. This depth chart is ripe with opportunity right now. Bruce Brown, of course, recovering from knee surgery, likely not back till mid-late November, it seems, is kind of the latest guesstimate on that. You've got Ja'Kobe Walter, who hopefully is going to be back sooner than later, but obviously is a rookie. There might be a bit of a ramp-up time there just to kind of get him installed before he can fill in minutes. Though I do think once we see Ja'Kobe Walter healthy and ready to go, I want to see him getting rotation minutes. I like full on. Wins don't matter this year. It's about development. It's about seeing what you got. And Ja'Kobe Walter has a skill set in that he gets to the line and he shoots a lot of threes. I think that is a skill set this team needs in the second unit for sure. And I would like to see him get run basically as soon as he's ready to go. But there's going to be some time for that. Obviously, he's dealing with the same injury as RJ Barrett. Hopefully, he's back pretty soon. But either way, a lot of opportunity and a lot of chances here for guys to carve out roles on this team, and equal opportunity to lose favor and kind of play yourself out of the plans for the rotation this season if guys can't perform during this stretch where Barrett, Brown, and Walter are going to be out. And so let's just run through 5 guys, the top 5 guys, I think, who have the most opportunity and perhaps the most to lose here. Some guys have more to lose than others. And number 1 on this list, I think there's a lot to gain and a whole lot to lose for Ochai Agbaji. I mentioned, I think he's probably the leader in the clubhouse to start in place of RJ Barrett. And if he performs well there, great. I think, it's pretty interesting with him too. His option date, I believe, is Halloween. And so there's like 3-4 games at the end of October before that. If Ochai Agbaji comes out and plays gangbusters and it looks awesome in a starting role, I bet the Raptors pick up that option and are pretty happy with it. And, they might still have their mind made up one way or another. I think there's a good chance they just pick it up anyway because it's like not a huge salary and he's a guy that they clearly, believe in a little bit, having just traded a first-round pick for him and Kelly Olynyk. It's not like the greatest of optics things to go decline the option on a guy you just traded for 8 months ago, but, could happen. We'll see. Either way, I think it's a huge chance here for Ochai Agbaji to, kind of make good on, he looked pretty good in the second half of that Wizards game. Looked kind of not good in the first half, but he was one of the guys who was getting high praise throughout the week in training camp, the scrimmage at McGill on Friday. This is a chance for him to kind of make good on all of that and sort of change his reputation within the fan base, within the team, and, carve out a role for himself this year. If he can be really good in place of RJ Barrett as a starter, I think there's probably a rotation gig for him throughout the season. And, that's going to knock other guys out for sure. It probably makes it harder for a guy like Jamal Shead to stick in the rotation. Certainly guys like Chris Boucher on the fringes probably see less minutes if Ochai is getting heavy minutes off the bench. But I do think this is kind of make or break time for Ochai Agbaji. Even if they pick up the option, I think there's a whole lot that he's got to prove to carve out a long-term role in the NBA. And time is running out for him. And as soon as Brown and Walter and Barrett start coming back, all of a sudden the competition on the wings is going to be that much greater. And I think the chance for Ochai to really kind of carve himself out a gig on this team is going to be limited. And so he's got to do it now while the opportunity's there, when the starting minutes are there. It's a huge stretch here for Ochai for sure. He is clearly number 1 for me on the opportunity power rankings. Number 2, this isn't that much to lose because I think he's going to start either way, whether, after RJ's back and all of that. But I think Gradey Dick has a real chance to go and sort of make a statement to start this season. There is going to be a need for play finishing on this team. We know Quickly and Barnes and Pirtle are going to bring their level of offense. I think we'll probably see an uptick in scoring and usage for Quickly without Barrett. And I think it'll probably reset back to what we sort of have preseason projections for once Barrett returns. I think Barnes is going to be asked to do a whole lot. We know this. Gradey Dick is a little bit of a mystery as to just how involved he's going to be in the offense. But if you're looking for a play finisher to work off of the leverage that Scotty and Quickly and Pirtle have as a trio with one another, Gradey Dick seems like the obvious guy to fill in a lot of that gap in scoring that's left behind by RJ Barrett right now. And so can Gradey Dick come out, hit threes, finish at the rim, do the thing that he did in the preseason game, minus the hitting threes? He's got to hit threes, obviously, but like that could be a huge opportunity for him to just sort of say, hey, I'm here, man. This breakout season time. Let's go. And, obviously his usage and role will reset once Barrett's back and the hierarchy snaps back into place. But I do think there's a really good chance here for Gradey Dick to turn some heads if he can have a good start to the season, filling in a lot of that scoring, just the scoring departure that the vacuum in scoring, whatever the hell the word is I'm looking for. I don't know, that RJ Barrett's going to leave behind. So lots of opportunity for Gradey Dick. Number 3, I got Jamal Shead. Him and Davion Mitchell are probably going to have to play a lot for the next little bit with the lack of guard depth this team has, with the injuries they're dealing with, and with Mitchell maybe being more of a 2 guard with, having to fill the role left behind by RJ a little bit. I think there is a chance that, especially if Mitchell starts, Jamal Shead is going to be there as the backup point guard out of the gate. And we love this. We love Jamal Shead. Shed heads unite. The Jamal cabal is here and it's thrilled. Pretty pumped. And, again, this will be a chance, I think, for Shed to say, hey, keep me in the NBA all year. I belong here. The team is better off if I am here. It's good for my development. It's good for the development of other guys on this team if I'm here, haranguing ball handlers, finishing at the rim, doing the Jamal Shead thing. And so, I think there's lots of chance here for Shed to really put his stamp on this team and make a real case that he should be with the club all season long, because he is going to get opportunity with this being the window before the 905 season starts. And with the injuries that are overlapping with that, there's a ton of chance here for Jamal Shead, I think, to go and carve himself out a season-long role. Number 4 in the opportunity power rankings, I have Chris Boucher, who I mentioned earlier. I think he's a stealth candidate to start in place of RJ Barrett. And I don't know if it's probably not going to happen. I'm not even sure if I would do this, but here's the argument for it. It's size. This team needs size. And without RJ Barrett, who again is shockingly one of the larger guys on this team, there's just a severe lack of dudes with length and athleticism and, again, just general raw size. Being big in basketball, good. Being small, less good. And so I think there's a small chance here that to sort of maintain the integrity of the second unit rotation, you keep your Agbaji and your Mitchell and your Olynyk and then whoever else fills in the 9th and 10th spots, probably Shed out of the gate and then, TBD on number 10. If there is a number 10 at all, but there's going to be a chance here for Boucher to carve up some minutes. And if he can sort of keep that second unit in sort of tact, keep the integrity of it and just kind of skip from being the 10th man into being, a starter, maybe that works. Maybe there's something there. I'm not super sold on the idea of a Barnes, Boucher, Pirtle front court. I think, there's the space in there could be pretty limited. Chris Boucher hasn't shot well from 3 since the Tampa season. And there's a real chance he's just someone teams don't give a damn about. The one thing I think he brings is he's eager to take threes. He'll get them up in bunches, and that's great. He thinks they're going in, which is half the battle. Same thing goes for Scotty Barnes. I think Scotty's probably a better shooter at this point than Chris Boucher. You hope that he can kind of pick up where he left off as a catch and shoot guy in particular last year. But, I think just for the defense that Chris Boucher can bring to the table, the extra rebounding, the gaming of the possession battle he can help you do for a team that's going to be in tough. I think, maybe there's a case there for Chris Boucher to get himself a starting job. And if Chris Boucher can be in the rotation this year, maybe he gets traded to a contender by the deadline. Maybe, he's not going to get, I think, re-signed by the Raptors or brought back or anything like that, or anything more than the minimum. But I do think, there's a chance here for Chris Boucher to kind of extend his career and latch on with another team beyond this season if he can really make hay if RJ Barrett's going to be out and he gets a chance to start again. I don't think it's going to happen. I do think he'll have rotation minutes with Barrett out just because there's not a whole lot of guys. They're missing 3 dudes from what was projected to be the rotation. I'm not sure Walter was entrenched, but I think I would have liked to have seen him be entrenched. Either way, Chris Boucher, I think, has got a real shot here to make some hay early in the season, and I would love to see that. Chris Boucher, very easy guy to root for. Last guy I have is DJ Carton. I don't expect he's going to have a ton of a role within the team just because they got a lot of guys at his position, but if there were going to be a time for him to grab a job and surprise and say, hey, I'm a two-way guy who's going to spend most of my two-way time with the Raptors and work towards getting a full conversion to an NBA deal, I do think DJ Carton's got the shot right now with Brown out, with Walter out, with Barrett out. He seems like a guy the Raptors really like. He's looked good in summer league and preseason. They seem to be pretty glowing in their praise of him. Super athletic. And again, if Mitchell is going to be playing more as a two guard with Barrett out, maybe there's a chance there for Carton to carve out some backup point guard minutes. I think the competition between him and Shead is interesting to watch. I'd rather see Shead, I think, but Carton's in there as well. So yeah, he's probably on this list as the number 5 guy with something to gain here from the absence of RJ Barrett. That's going to do it for today's show. That's a lot of injury talk for today. Hopefully we don't have to do this more and we can get through the rest of the preseason without too much incident. And hopefully that's, God, please no more injuries. Put everyone on ice. Just skip the preseason entirely. I'm fine with that. Whatever. We'll come back on Thursday. Doug Branson from Locked On Hornets is going to be along, and we are going to talk all about the Raptors and Hornets and who's better, who's going to get that 10th seed, who is the 10th best team or the 6th worst team in the Eastern Conference, and who is 11th best / 5th worst. It's basically those two teams, it feels like, for 10 or 11. We're going to talk about that with our pal Doug tomorrow. We love Doug Branson on this here show. Friday, TBD, and we'll keep the week rolling along. We got games to talk about next week all over the place. I'll be at the game against the Celtics on Tuesday. Very much looking forward to that. Hopefully get to some practice at some point next week too. So lots to come here on the show as the season is getting closer and closer. Until tomorrow, please follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. Thanks for hanging out. Join the Discord. Link in the description of the podcast. As always, it's free to join. And we will talk to you Thursday for another episode of Locked On Raptors. Thanks for hanging. Bye-bye. 4 of the last 5. I am on a heater.